Maupay nga aga! Good day everyone! Welcome to another science adventure where the search for the truth continues. So hang on tight for we will answer your what, why, and how questions. Let us discover the beauty of the world together, for in the great mind of a science adventurer like you, learning never stops. Let me take you to where your imagination will allow you to go. This is your science teacher, Teacher Neil Brian Butan, your guide in exploring and discovering the world of science then. Come and join me in our short yet exciting science adventure. So buckle up and get ready to learn and have fun. Tara! At the end of today's adventure, we are expected to answer the following questions. First, what are the factors that affect the population growth? Second, why are these factors affect the population growth? Third, how are these factors affect the population growth? Reminders, please prepare yourself learning module, paper, and pen, for these things are vital as we continue to discover things about population growth. Are you now ready? Are you now set? If you are, let us begin. In your grade 9, you've learned how changes in the environment affect species extinction and how species extinction relate to the failure of populations of organisms to adapt changes in the environment. To recall some of these terms, I will be giving you descriptions of the terms, and what you only need to do is to rearrange the jumbled letters that will form the correct term being described. You are only given 10 seconds to unlock each of the term. Starting off with number 1. It refers to a biological community of interacting organisms and their physical environment. The term being described is awesome. It's ecosystem. Let us have description number 2. It refers to the variety of life in an area. The correct term being described here is right. It's biodiversity. Moving on to description number 3. It refers to the total number of organisms of the same species inhabiting a place at the same time. If your answer is population, well, congratulations! Let us have description number 4. It refers to the number of individuals in an area. If your answer is population density, well done! Moving on to the last description number 5. This refers to environmental conditions that keep a population from over-increasing in size and thus help balance ecosystem. If your answer is limiting factor, you're great! You really did well when you were in grade 9. I want you to note these terms: ecosystem, biodiversity, population density, and limiting factor. For these terms will help us to better understand our topic for today. This time, we will have another adventure. Are you all excited for our next adventure? Yes, this adventure is something that we will all enjoy. Are you familiar of the game 4 Pigs 1 Word? If you do, this would be a lot easier for you. But for those who don't know yet, this is how it goes. I will be flashing out 4 pictures. What you will need to do is observe the pictures and solve the puzzle by working out what the word is or what the words are. To solve the puzzle, you will supply the missing letter below the pictures. Take note that every box corresponds to a certain letter, and you will only be given 10 seconds to solve the puzzle. Let us have puzzle number 1. If your answer is natural disasters, well done! I commend you in your quick thinking. Let us have puzzle number 2. Right! The correct term for these pictures is immigration. Let us have puzzle number 3. If your answer is infectious diseases, congratulations! These 3 terms, natural disaster, immigration, and infectious diseases, are just some of the factors that affect the population growth. So today, we will be identifying the factors that affect the population growth. Why do some populations grow and some tend to shrink?
A major component of modern ecological research focuses on understanding what influences the abundance of organisms within a population and why this abundance changes over time.
The term population dynamics is used to refer how populations of species change over time. When conditions are ideal for growth and reproduction, the population will experience a rapid increase in size. Initially, the population grows slowly, but the larger the population gets, the faster it grows. As more offspring survive and reproduce, even more offspring are born. This graph that you can see is a representation of an increasing size of the population. Population growth is based on the 4 fundamental factors. First is the birth rate, second is the death rate, third is immigration, and the fourth is emigration. Using these factors, the formula in determining the population growth is as follows. Population growth is equal to the birth rate plus the immigrants minus the death rate plus the emigrants. If the population growth is less than 0, this simply means that there are more deaths and emigrants or organisms that live the area in a population than there are birds or immigrants or organisms that arrive to the area. If this is the case, the size of the population will begin to decline. Trivia time! Did you know that immigration and immigration are homonyms? Homonyms are words having the same spelling or pronunciation but have different meanings and origin. Immigration is the act of leaving one's own country to settle permanently in another, while immigration is the act of coming to live permanently in another country. Let us associate letter E in immigration with the word exit to remember that the word means moving out of the country. And let us associate the letter I of immigration with the word in to remember that the word means moving into a new country. I hope you got it! Population would probably grow in size, however, population of organisms cannot grow forever. Its growth will be limited or stopped at some point, and death rate will be greater than birth rate. A population growth is limited by two general factors: density-independent factors and density-dependent factors. To understand why scientists named these factors in the way they did, you have first to understand the concept of population density. Population density refers to the number of organisms per unit area. If the population's density is very high, that means that there are a lot of organisms crowded in a certain area. However, if the population's density is very low, that means there are very few organisms in an area. A factor that regulates a population's growth and is influenced by population density is called density-dependent limiting factor. And if a population's density is not directly influence changes in the population's growth, then it is called density-independent limiting factor. Density-independent limiting factor that can stop population from growing can be such things as natural disasters, temperature, sunlight, and human activities in the environment. Natural disasters such as typhoons, floods, earthquakes, and fires will stop a population from growing no matter how many organisms are living in a certain area. The same goes for the temperature of an area and the amount of sunlight it receives. If the temperature increases due to global warming, this will cause a decrease in a population's number, no matter how large or small the population was to begin with. Human activities that alter the environment will also decrease the number of organisms in a population, regardless of the size of a population. Density-dependent limiting factors come into play when a population reaches a certain number of organisms. For example, when a population reaches a certain size, there won't be enough resources such as food, shelter, and water for all the organisms. This could cause the population to stop growing when it reaches the maximum number of organisms that can be supported or carried by the environment. This number is known as the population's carrying capacity in a particular environment. Each population of organisms has a different carrying capacity, depending on the amount of resources available in the area in which they live. Let us have now the factors that depend on population density. Number one is infectious diseases. Infectious diseases spread faster densely in populated areas. Let us have the second factor that depends on population density: competition for resources. In an ecosystem, there are two types of organisms: organisms that are strong and organisms that are weak. Strong organisms have better adaptation in the environment. That's why they could reproduce more often, resulting in an increase in their population. While weak organisms have limited abilities to compete for resources, resulting in a decrease in their population.
The third factor that depends on population density is predation. Plenty of prey available, predators will be able to eat sufficiently, thus have energy to reproduce much and increase their numbers. The population of their prey will begin to decrease as more and more of them are eaten. However, the predator population will eventually reach carrying capacity. There will not be enough prey for all of the predators in the population, since the predators themselves compete for the prey resource. As the number of prey decreases, so will the number of predators, because there is not enough food to sustain them. The last factor that depends on population density is emigration. Emigration occurs when a population approaches its carrying capacity, and individual organisms leave and go to a new area where they can find enough resources for survival and reproduction. This will obviously cause a decrease in the amount of organisms in a population.
Activity time! At the end of this activity, you should be able to identify the factors affecting the population growth for each of the following situational questions, using of course the knowledge that you have learned from our previous discussion. You are only given 10 seconds to answer. Let us start with situation A. Because of COVID-19, 254,000 OFWs flown home amid pandemic. The factor that affects the population growth being referred here is very good, it's immigration. Let us have situation number 2. COVID-19 updates as of October 18, 2020. Total cases 354,000, total recoveries 295,000, and the total death is 6,603. So the factor that affects the population growth being referred in this situation is excellent, it's infectious diseases. Let us have the next situation. The volcano erupted in the afternoon of January 12, 2020, 43 years after its previous eruption in 1997. So what factor that affects population growth is being referred in this situation? Well done! It's natural disaster. Let us have situation D. Deforestation destroyed the natural habitat of many organisms living in forests that causes extinction of species. So what factor affecting the population growth is being referred in this situation? Awesome! It's human activity. Moving on to our last situation. Over 800 Filipino workers migrated to other countries looking for greener pasture. So what factor affecting the population growth is being referred in this situation? Excellent! It's immigration. Trivia time! In our situation, we have mentioned greener pastures. Greener pastures is an example of an idiomatic expression, which means To change, that is something for the better. For example, many scientists working for the government have left for greener pastures in the private sector. I hope you got it! This time, let us answer these observational questions. Starting off with question number 1. Which among the situations shown earlier affects the population growth because of immigration? Is it letter A, situation A and C? Is it letter B, situation A and E? Or is it letter C, situation C and B? Or is it letter D, situation E and C? Your timer starts now. The correct answer for this question is letter B, situation A and situation E. Moving on to the next question. Based on the situation given, which situation affects the population growth because of natural disasters? Is it letter A, situation C? Is it letter B, situation A? Or is it letter C, situation B? Or is it letter D, situation E? Your time starts now. The correct answer for this question is letter A, situation C. Moving on to the third question. What factor affects the population growth for situation B? Is it letter A, immigration, letter B, predation, or is it letter C, infectious disease, or is it letter D, human activities? Your time starts now. The correct answer for this question is letter C, infectious disease. Moving on to the fourth question. What kind of limiting factors are natural disasters, temperatures, sunlight, and human activities? A, density independent limiting factor. B, density dependent limiting factor. Or is it letter C, density limiting factor? Or letter D, dependent limiting factor? Your time starts now. The correct answer for this question is letter A, density independent limiting factor. Moving on to the last question. Which of the following are natural disasters? A, tropical cyclones, sunlight, temperature, and fires. Letter B, floods, earthquakes, fires, and tropical cyclones. Letter C, temperature, floods, fires, and sunlight. Or letter D, sunlight, fires, floods, and temperatures. Your time starts now. The correct answer for this question is letter B, floods, earthquakes, fires, and tropical cyclones. Activity time! This time, we will identify situation as to whether it's density-dependent limiting factor or density-independent limiting factor, and further identify the specific factor that affects the population growth. According to NDR-MC, 6,340 total fatalities were recorded in Leyte after the devastation of Super Typhoon Yolanda on November 8, 2013. Now, is the situation density dependent or density independent? Very good, it's density independent. What about the factor that limits the population growth? Right, it's natural disaster. Trivia time! In our situation, we have mentioned the acronym NDRRMC. NDRRMC stands for the National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Council, or formerly known as the NDCC, or the National Disaster Coordinating Council. Is a working group of various government, non-government, civil sector, and private sector organizations of the Government of the Republic of the Philippines, established by the Republic Act 10121 of 2009. It is administered by the Office of the Civil Defense under the Government of the National Defense. The Council is responsible in ensuring the protection and welfare of the people in times of disasters and emergencies. I hope you got it! Oacan Leyte has a total number of COVID-19 cases of 102 with total recoveries of 97 and 3 recorded deaths as of March 8, 2021. Now, is the situation density dependent or density independent? Right, it's density dependent. What about the factors affecting the population growth? Very good, it's infectious diseases. An increase in the number of house lizard or taguto in population zone 2, Capoacan, Leyte causes a decrease in the population of mosquito. Now, is the situation density dependent or density independent? Excellent! It's density dependent. What about the factor that affects the population growth? Awesome! It's predation. Improper waste disposal in Capoacan Bay harmed and destroyed many aquatic organisms. Is the situation density dependent or density independent? Awesome! It's density independent. What about the factor affecting the population growth? Right, it's human activity. Mrs. Tirado, an advisor of Grade 8 Champaca, has 65 students in her section, but she has a room for 50. Because the room was crowded, the 15 students were transferred to Grade 8 Daffodil. Now, is the situation density dependent or density independent? Well done! It's density dependent. What about the factor that affects the population growth? Excellent! It's immigration. At this point, it is now your turn to identify the factor affecting the population growth. You will just write your answer on the blank provided. But before going there, let us have first a stretching activity for you to be able to answer better. For our stretching activity, we'll have 4 figures. Figure 1, head rotation. Figure 2, shoulder rotation. Figure 3, hip rotation. And figure 4, jog in place. Are you now ready? I know you're ready. Let's do this. In the count of 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Audio Jungle.
Did you enjoy our stretching activity? I hope so. Now let's dive into our activity.
Number 1. Dinoflagellates in Laguna de Bay increase in population due to increase in organic substance in the body of water brought by the water pollution. Number 2. The oil spill in Cavite area harmed many aquatic organisms in the vicinity. Number 3. A new strain of dengue virus breaks out in the country. Number 4. Population of Philippine eagle decreases because of deforestation. Number 5. Super Typhoon Yolanda caused many residents to leave Leyte. Number 6. Mrs. Rosales has 55 students in her biology class, but she has a room for 50. Because the room was crowded, the 5 students were asked to go to the curriculum chairperson to change their schedule. Number 7. Fatality rate of COVID-19 is very high among seniors aged 60 above and those with underlying health conditions. Number 8. Coco lizard infestation outbreak has been declared in some parts of the Philippines. The coco lizard feeds on the sap of the coconut tree and injects toxic enzymes, resulting in discolored leaves and deformed plant tissues that retard its growth of coconut trees. Number 9. The Department of Agriculture have announced on Monday, February 22, 2021, that there are 9 municipalities in Leyte affected by African swine fever. Number 10. An increase in the number of domestic cats in Capoocan causes a decrease in the population of rats.
That's all for today, and I hope that you've learned, and I will see you in the next video. Just a reminder, stay home, stay safe, and keep yourself healthy. Bye-bye!